eyes shining like a jewel diadem. And then putrescence, asphyxiance. And devourance.
Hey, yo, friends. Welcome back to another spine-chilling episode of, I'll say it this way, In Madness Pod. There's going to be a lot of that this episode. 41. Shawn the Butcher, here with Vertebrae33. How's it going? How is it going, my friend?
On.
He's got a mustache.
It is a black omen to podcast when you are ill.
Oh, wow.
You shall remain here with me.
If you didn't love this movie, I have a feeling you loved aspects of this movie. I love that Vertebrae is the impression guy on the show. He does the Morgan Freeman, and he does the Orlock, and he sings typo negative. I never thought
When the hell
Vertebrae
did this happen?
would be
When the
the
hell did this happen?
all very recently, in a very, very recent chunk of time. Thank you very much for joining us for an episode I am incredibly excited about. In Madness Pod, the premier podcast on the socials at In Madness Pod, inmadnesspod@gmail.com. We're dipping into the mail sack very soon. I've seen a couple emails and voice notes in there. Make sure you email us any questions you have about any of our episodes, our movie episodes, our 0.5 episodes. Check us out on YouTube and you can see Vertebrae's wicked Orlock mustache. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment. Give us the 5-star reviews on any platform you are listening on, and check out the In Madness Spotify playlist, which now has typo negative, fit for an autopsy, and as I always love to mention, Whitney Houston. You listen to it for a full day of work, 8 hours, you will never hear the same song twice on the In Madness Spotify playlist. Happy In Madness Monday. If that is indeed when you're listening, we drop a brand new episode every Monday, 2 years solid. We are kicking ass. Make sure you tell everybody you know about this podcast. Spread the madness worldwide. Wrap the In Madness tentacles around the world. And you can get your shirt at inmadness.com. You can get your mug at inmadness.com. Vertebrae, what mug are you rocking today?
Well, special one for this episode.
Oh, you got a Nosferatu mug. Dude, does it have a mustache?
Yes, of course. And then I got this Nosferatu hoodie. I'm going to show it on YouTube so you can see it.
Oh, Vertebrae always goes all in. Oh, it's like in black. Oh, so it's a black font and black writing on a black hoodie, but it looks gnarly.
It's stitched. It's not like silkscreen. Nice,
it pops out.
Stitch, raised comfort.
That there, man, this warms my heart because even as of recent, as our Tim Howley episode last week, shout outs to Tim Howley. Thank you for being on the show. Even then, even now, I did not know your Nosferatu verdict. However, after seeing your abundance of merch over this past couple of seconds, perhaps it's for the original, but I would like to think it's for the movie we're about to cover.
Well, I'll say this very quickly. I did enjoy this film a lot, but I have a lot of logistical questions about said film. And we get into all the details of what I love, but this, once again, watching these films with that half a brain that I share with you for In Madness makes me look at things differently. So we'll go through it, but obviously overall, and we could talk about where this kind of ranks in our Eggers films of his 4 films, but overall, I really dug it. and we'll get to more as we go. I can't give you all of it.
No. Okay. I just
Yeah, I don't
I
wanna.
figured all the merch was a dead giveaway, but it quickly can change and things can go
Yeah,
horribly
that's fine.
wrong.
You know, I'm a sucker for a good logo. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah.
who knows? But now my lighting's all thrown off because I'm brighter looking than I used to
I
be.
mean,
Because
I was disappointed with a lot of movies last year.
Mhm.
We'll get into some shortly. But this was also after I saw before I saw The Substance, which I would also like to add to our movie list. One of my
Mhm.
favorite movies I've seen in the last couple of years. But my expectations were high for Nosferatu, and personally, by the end of this, you will see how much I feel like Robert Eggers delivered for me.
Absolutely. And
Personally.
also I'm very worried that like maybe Orlok's going to show up again during these episodes we do with this.
Oh, are you
have a
worried? Are
I'm
you very
concerned. I'm
worried?
a little
I'm
concerned,
gonna
but
leave my chest wide open.
oh boy.
You come take
Yeah.
a healthy gulp.
Yeah.
I'm
Sean's
waiting.
got a date at midnight with Nosferatu.
More typo from
Can I tell you
Vertebrae.
something?
Yes,
So,
please.
uh, we dive deep into these movies. We spend a lot of time in the world of these films, and it's been a few weeks of me nonstop either talking like Orlok or talking like Pete Steele from Typo Negative, or listening to Typo Negative, or listening to the score from Nosferatu. So much so that I have been like internally narrating my life like I'm Peter Steele from Typo Negative. Like literally just be in my house and be like, there's a laundry basket on the floor, like in my, and like singing to myself, like nobody else is around, so I am fully immersed in this. I know we can give it away now. We're after we do Nosferatu, we're going to talk about the 1922 film, so we'll touch on it in this, but we can kind of really save some of that, and we'll also talk about, you know there's a Eggers always does the director's commentary, so I would certainly love to talk about the director's commentary as well, and get into it. But yes, Nosferatu 2024, written directed by one of our favorites, Robert Eggers, remake of the Nosferatu Symphony of Horror 1922, which was an unauthorized adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, which came out in 1897. The cinematographer on this is Jaron Blaschke. I hope I'm saying his name right, but he's worked on all three previous Eggers films. So pretty incredible work. They're a very good tag team together. Eggers says that he watched the 1922 film, when he was 9. And I can tell that kind of set his course in filmmaking in a lot of ways. And, this film has an interesting history of the 1922. We'll go into the 22 when we do it, but there's a lawsuit and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on with that and the estate. And I'm going to skip that in my notes because I feel like we can hold that until there's plenty to talk about in this film unto itself. Score by Robin Carolyn, British Irish film composer. Incredible score. It's interesting. It's in like bite-sized pieces. The tracks are like only like a minute 30 or something long, 2 minutes long. I will give advice. Don't listen to it when you're driving. I was listening to it when I was driving. Like even when I was passing somebody, it just felt like really scary. Like I don't know what was going to happen. So, but yeah, it's pretty amazing film. Shawn, where did you see it? How did you see it? Let's go over that.
I wanted to say that I saw it in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned this in our previous episode with Tim Howley. I had to pee immediately, and I refused to get up. And I was like, when there's a lull, I will run out really quick. And every 5 minutes, I was like, oh man, this is awesome. Oh man, this is cool. Oh man, this is great. I loved it in theaters. I loved it streaming on Peacock, the extended version. I loved watching the unextended version, which is 4 minutes shorter. What 4 minutes? I can't tell. And that was just watching it for fun before I even bothered to watch it, diving deep into it for this podcast. So I just watched it like a bunch before I couldn't wait for it to come to streaming. I've never been to the movies on Christmas that I can remember. And it was like, you know, they announced the movie in like June of last year, and it was like Christmas of this year. And I was like, oh, know what I'm doing on Christmas? Like immediately it was like locked in. I had to go check it out. And yeah, I loved it. I loved it very much.
You know, it's crazy too. So I listened to a few interviews with Eggers. Oh, but firstly, I saw it obviously at home for any listener who's not surprised by that, on a 4K Blu-ray. And I watched the non-extended first. I watched the theatrical cut first, and then working my way through the extended. But Shawn, when I first watched this, it was coming on that run of flu illness in my house. So at the time, my wife is sick and she's upstairs and she's sleeping and she's congested. So you could hear kind of noises
A
cascading
house full of
down,
Nosferatus.
right? And that's I literally sitting on the couch, and this movie, like a lot of these types of movies, a lot of horror movies, they go from like super quiet to super loud. And so, you know, when we get it, we'll get into it, and Orlok's talking and doing all the breathing, and then I'm hearing stuff coming from upstairs, and I'm like, man, the sound is amazing on this television. It was just like drawing me in. But, you know, I asked myself, Nosferatu, what is that? What does it mean? Like, what even does it mean? And it's just a name. It's just a name, Romanian name, which obviously probably people don't name their kids anymore. But it had other meanings like troublesome or unbearable or offensive. So that's probably why they picked it for this. And then it just became, you know, synonymous with vampires. So nobody's going to ever, I don't think anybody's going to name their kid Nosferatu again. But, and I brought this up to Tim. I thought this was really interesting in the previous episode, but Shadow of the Vampire comes out in 2000, and William Dafoe is in it. And it's a fictionalized account. And you should definitely see this if you haven't seen it, of the making of the original. And it's kind of based on the fact that when people finally get to see this 1922 film, it's so dark. It's so, there's a cleaned up version, and the cleaned up version, you can almost kind of see the bald cap and stuff. So when it's so dark and creepy, there was lots of rumors that, you know, Max Schreck, who did his own makeup, by the way, so he would do his makeup and then like arrive on set and kind of freak people out, was an actual vampire. And there's certain scenes where people talk about his eyes looking like a cat's eyes instead, but that's just all because it's grainy old film. And then there's a colorized version somewhere online, which is just awful. There's just no reason for that at all. But The Shadow of the Vampire is such a cool movie because William Dafoe plays Max Schreck in it. So it's like we have William Dafoe 25, or, you know, when this movie comes out 2024, 24 years later, and he's in a remake of a film that he of a film that he made a film about before, you know. And that, I thought that was really, really cool. That's a really neat movie. So quickly, the cast is Lily Depp Rose as Ellen Hunter. And what's interesting, Shawn, is they changed all the names for this. When they made this version in Germany, they tried to get away with making it. So it went from Dracula to Orlok, and they changed like the characters' names. But there's really no fooling anybody on what the story is. And one of the things they did change too is, Dracula is England, and this is Germany. So that does set up some logistical questions I'm going to have for you as we go along. But Nicholas Hoult as Thomas Hutter, Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok, who this film, Eggers is thinking about this film for a decade. And he originally wanted to cast Skarsgård as the husband character. And then time goes on, and he sees him in It, and he realizes, here we go. I got my guy for this. And, you know, he does an absolutely phenomenal job. Aaron Taylor Johnson as Frederick Harding, William Dafoe as Professor, probably my favorite character in the film, Professor Albin Eberhardt. And she's got her friend Emma Corrin plays Anna Harding, and then our buddy Ralph Einstein is Dr. Wilhelm Sievers, who Einstein was in The Witch. You know, he's the dad in The Witch, so he's back again. Eggers loves to do this. He's bringing back this crew that he has. He brings back the whole crew, a lot of the crew that worked on the movie. sound designers and cinematographer, of course, and it's just amazing. And on this movie, Shawn, his producer, and he's a producer who is actively helping the film, is our buddy Chris Columbus, who we know from everything from Harry Potter to Gremlins to there's a million. Was it Gremlins or was it no? It was
Gremlins.
Harry Potter. Yeah, he's been on a ton. Home Alone, right? So he's on there working with him. And Eggers tells a funny story. He was on another podcast. It's a Directors Guild podcast where they'll have a director or a producer interview. So they screen the movie at the Directors Guild of America, and then they'll be on stage, and the director will come out, and like another famous person will interview him. So it's like Spielberg being Carpenter's interviewing Spielberg or something. I don't know that that's ever happened, but it's that type of thing. And he's there with Chris Columbus, and he starts telling a story about when they were shooting The Castle. And it's like they went there, they build everything. They're on location. They're in Prague. They're at this castle, and he's shooting it. And Eggers said his artsy fartsy way, and Chris Columbus is like, "Well, we're here though, so like you need to see this thing." And he's like, "Well, like how would you shoot a castle?" And then he said he went like home or whatever and like watched Harry Potter when they introduced the castle, and he was like, "Oh." Like you gotta see this thing, right? Because it's amazing and it's a big part of the set, and otherwise it looks like just a set and not like a real location. But so I thought that was interesting. He seems, our buddy Eggers is always trying to learn and trying to grow as an artist and as a creator, and certainly excited to see what he does next after this. I think his next film is maybe a werewolf movie.
I
They
heard
talked
something like
about.
that. Yep.
Yeah. I think he would do a really good job with like a lot of things, but like I could imagine like a Sherlock Holmes film with him doing it a little bit darker, I think would be great. So can I won't ask you now. I was going to ask you where you this movie sits in your pantheon of Eggers films, but
High up there. It's high
yeah,
up there. I mean, what do we have? We have Lighthouse, we have Witch, we have
The
Northman,
Northman, and then he only has 4.
and
So,
this.
and then
Okay, so it would be Witch. Oh man. This, Lighthouse, and Northman.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to quickly also shout out Count Orlok's Nightmare Gallery Monster Museum in Salem, Massachusetts. I went there once and it was friggin' awesome. I got The Thing pajamas from there. It is by far my coolest piece of horror merch. Shout outs to Count Orlok's Nightmare Gallery in Salem, Massachusetts. If you didn't know it's there, if you're anywhere near there, I highly recommend you go check it out. So shall we?
Shall we, Shawn? Are you going to take us? You're going to gently guide us through this movie?
So again, in classic Robert Eggers style, this movie is super key to the period in which it was released. The language is quite different, so I'm going to do my best to sort of interpret it in my own goofy ass way for the duration of this movie. So the movie opens. We got Johnny Depp's daughter, Lily Rose Depp, who plays Ellen Hutter. She's crying. She's praying. She's saying, "Come to me, a guardian angel, spirit of comfort, spirit of any celestial sphere, anything, hear my call." And we hear a deep voice. I'll probably be doing Nosferatu for most of it.
Okay.
You. Cool. So, okay, my first question. And I know it even gets answered throughout the duration of the movie, but I still have the same question at the end. Is she calling for him? What is she calling for? Like, why is she's praying and she's crying? The movie opens, she's praying and she's crying. I get she's having a rough life. Things are bad. She's calling for a guardian angel of good. Instead, is what's happening, the lines getting crossed. And instead of calling for good, she receives this evil, or is she purposely calling out for this evil? That was my immediate question.
I think she's just calling out. I think they're connected. They are connected in a certain way, cosmically, I guess, through the spirits, through the ether. I don't know. And I think she was just sort of calling out for support. and she threw it out there into the universe. And you know, like this film rides the line of a possession story, and you mentioned in the previous podcast having exorcist overtones, and so I think, you know, what a way to start a possession story if you're like calling for help and that's how you get possessed.
So the
We've seen
lines
him
get
just
crossed.
possess like
Yeah,
weak
yeah,
people
yeah.
before, but in this case, like you're calling out for somebody to help you in your
Mhm,
life, and
mhm,
they're like they'll answer it because she's, you know, sort of has something.
mhm,
So
mhm.
yeah, I think on the first viewing I didn't really get that. I didn't understand it. And then the second time I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, there's such a later on you realize what the connection is between the two of them. And it's so strong, and they were almost like fated to be together. You could even say, you know, her very existence is just to lead to the point of the end of the movie in some
And
ways.
because of that, and because they're fated together, there are many parts throughout this movie where I feel like she's in on it.
Really? I
Yes,
never thought
I
that.
pulled a
And
vertebrae.
I always think that.
Yes, I pulled a vertebrae and I
Huh.
was like, "Is she part of this?" So, well,
But I
I'll
don't know, like, part of it, I would say it's funny, now you got me thinking about it, Sean.
I will
So,
so when it happens, I raise my questions each time.
okay,
I'll
consciously
think
part
about
of it, but maybe
it. Well,
just
so maybe not
falling
consciously
in love
part
with
of it,
him.
maybe, like, maybe the possessed part, but still an inside job. She's possessed, but it's still like she's half there and half not.
True, but she really knows what she has to do in the
Yes.
end, so
Yeah.
that really we're jumping all over the film, so if
Yes.
you're following along and you never saw it, I apologize. You know, Sean, we never give a spoiler warning, but, like, I think that's pretty silly,
That's
right?
the
Because the
part
whole
of that's
movie's
the point
about
of the
this film,
show.
so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter. We're gonna, you know, we're gonna spoil it like crazy, and I think this movie, with a lot of Eggers films, you kind of have to jump forwards and backwards as you talk about it because things start to make sense. Or you just brought that up to me, and I'm like, huh, I never
Yeah.
thought of that
Yeah.
before. Okay, so
I will raise the question further later on. We get this six shot. Ellen walks to her window. The shade is blowing. We hear it. You've awakened me from an eternity of darkness.
mm,
And in the blowing sheets, we see a silhouette, a shadow, almost a Hitchcock like tribute. We see the shape of Nosferatu.
mm.
He says, "You are not for the living, not for humankind." And now Ellen is levitating. Now she's walking outside. There's this beautiful, eerie, moonlit night. He says, "Shall you be one with me eternally? Do you swear it?" And she swears it on her own behalf
Hmm.
or under the influence of this spirit that she is now summoned.
And you think Nosferatu was like, I went looking for trouble, and boy, I found her. You know what's funny is what was his deal? I'd love to know what his deal was before that. You know, is he just in that sarcophagus waiting for somebody to reach out to him?
Yeah, he's
Meaning,
probably been bothering chicks all through, just lineages of families and
but we see
millions
him
of
like
years.
spiked and stuff. So, like, maybe somebody finally took him out, but you can't completely take him out because then he sort of can unearth himself again. Um, yeah, this is, I would assume this has to be have been going on for like decades and decades, right? Hundreds of years,
And that's
maybe.
the thing, like, I don't know how old he is, I just feel like he's millions of years old.
Yeah, it'd be scary if he was like, you know, if he was my age, at least I'd feel pretty good about how
Yeah,
I look, you know?
yeah. He's still in pretty good shape until the end.
Yeah.
But so she makes this pact with him, and I'm like, "You know what that reminds me of? The daughter in The Witch."
Hmm. Oh, yeah, that's
Makes
true.
this pact with evil.
I didn't even think of this. And, you know,
I love
so
this movie. I love Robert Eggers, man.
the way well, that's on the bucket list of people to have on. I think probably we would annoy him very quickly in like 20 minutes. I think
That's all we need. Just give me
we
20
would
minutes, Eggers.
But you know what? I don't know. He does all those interview. He's been on podcasts, but we could ask different questions maybe, or we could just talk about whatever the hell he wanted to. But Count Orlok, he speaks in this reconstructed version of Dacian, which is an ancient Romanian language. So again, here's Eggers doing all the extra research. He talks about in one of the interviews about having like a room full of books. It just sounds like a fantastic place to go when he's doing these movies on set, and you could just go in there and just like look at what you need to look at and do your research and immerse you in the worlds that you want to be a part of. He's also mentioned in quite a few interviews he wouldn't want to do something that's modern because he feels like you got to work in the cell phone or you got to work in this or that, and it's just that's no fun to him. We
Fun to
agree.
me either. Yeah.
We agree.
Ellen begins moaning sexually. A lot of this movie is super hot. At times, it does feel like a porno, and I'm okay with it. But right as things are getting a little too sexy, whap, a big hand wraps tightly around her throat, and for a brief second, we get a crystal clear shot of Orlok, Nosferatu, who lets out this monstrous scream, as does Ellen, who begins spazzing the hell out on the floor, which she does incredibly throughout many parts of this film. This horrifying, shrieking, fast-paced violin build-up is playing in the background. She jerks her body in this like one motion where she's like, I don't know, her legs up, her body's down, her arms up. She's like a statue. It looks crazy. And then she turns on the side. She's twitching, possessed. The camera goes down into the ground. Nosferatu. Yeah, sick opening to a movie.
Yeah, and what a great logo. The logo was designed by Teddy Blanks, who worked on title treatments and logos, and he's a kind of a writer, director and stuff too, but he's worked with Eggers before on The Lighthouse, and he worked on Hereditary, Midsommar, The Lighthouse, and The Green Knight. So it's a fantastic job, fantastic type treatment. Boys and girls, that's not a font. I saw a Reddit post online where people were like, "Hey, that's a cool font. What's the font?" That is not a font. That is type design. There is a big difference between using a font and type design, and I think it's incredible. That's part of the reason why I wanted this hoodie with the logo on it. I think it's just an incredible job that he did with it. So,
making his other premiere on the show. Welcome Gus to the show. What up,
Sean's
Gus?
holding a big black cat. Gus.
Yeah.
Gus has been on before, right?
Yeah, shout out. Yep. This is Gus's second appearance. He just walked in and he wants treats, and now he's gonna hang out. I mentioned this before. Like, so many shots in this movie look like paintings. I love the mood that Robert Eggers sets. It is just such a sick scene and sick movie, and I love all the research he puts into it. It rocks. So now we're years later. Ellen wakes up. She's already freaked out. She's looking for Thomas, her love, Beast from the X-Men, also Jagoff Tyler from The Menu.
Yes, and Sean, I don't like either of these people.
Really?
Like, I'm not rooting for them to succeed.
Okay.
Maybe it's the Menu thing. Maybe I mistrust her.
Well,
maybe there's something to the aloofness of her character. But I don't find myself rooting for anyone until Willem Dafoe shows up.
Well, which is great. Tyler, not Tyler. What's his Thomas? Thomas, he's Tyler in The Menu. Thomas definitely annoys me at points during this movie, which I will also point out.
And they're doing a great job. Their acting is incredible. I'm just saying I don't particularly like them that much. So they're not sympathetic characters to me a lot of times. It just doesn't come across like that. I'm almost rooting for, Orlok to.
For Orlok, I don't mind rooting for Orlok. Oh boy, I don't mind rooting for Orlok. He asked her why she's freaked out. She had a bad dream. She says their honeymoon was too short. She wants to get it on, but he's got to go to work. They also have an adorable cat. Yeah, Gus, they have a cat. Yes, they do. Okay. And much like Danny Torrance in The Shining, predicting Jack getting the job at the hotel, she like goes into this trance, Ellen, and says he has the position already. They'll send him away. Watching this for the first time, I was like, oh, is she like a psychic? Watching it for like the 8th time, I was like, is she telling this to Orlok?
Oh, geez, Shawn.
I'm thinking little seeds are planted that make me feel like she's in on
But
it.
except in on it to what? What's the end game?
I don't know.
Because she does the right thing. So what is the end game?
I don't know.
What is her intention?
I don't know. It's weird.
I
She gets
think,
this weird look on her
listen,
face. It's
if
just
this,
very deceptive.
but let's say this movie plays a lot with mental illness as well, and the plague, and we wrap those types of things into it. So if we say she was disturbed when she was younger, something reached out to her, you could in a lot of ways eliminate Nosferatu from this film at certain points, and it would still be the same film. She's disturbed, she has a problem, it ends tragically for her. Like it is very interesting. And maybe this, in a lot of ways, kids will have like imaginary friends too, and they'll talk to them and it'll help them get through things, or we all talk to ourselves. I'm walking around the house talking like I'm in a Typo Negative song. So maybe she doesn't know the full weight of that, or she just knows that this is a guiding spirit for her, and then she starts to connect the dots later on, and that's when she's like, oh man, he's like really, really bad, and now I gotta, right? Like, she could have just been saying it out loud. I mean, one, I guess she's saying it for our purposes and to make her character in the movie, but maybe it's just almost like her imaginary friend in a lot of ways.
I got a lot of Danny Torrance from The Shining from that.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas leaves for work. The streets are incredible. Butcher right out in the open, chopping up meat, horse and carriage, people everywhere, lively chatter. The whole place just looks dope. Turns out we're in Germany, 1838. He arrives at Knack and Associates estate agents. Old dudes inside are pissed. You've kept him a quarter hour. He enters the office of this weirdo, Herr Knack, who before Thomas even walks into the office, the dude is maniacally laughing.
And Shawn, stop you here. Why does everybody in the film have a British accent?
I have no idea.
Yeah. It was upon the second viewing where I was like, okay, fine, they don't have German accents. It is what it is. But like, why do they all have British accents?
Beyond me. That's another one, another little vertebrae's bits right there.
Well, I mean, it's 1838 Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So are they transported from England? And is that where she had her problems? Maybe that's the case. Maybe, but then the doctors doesn't have a German accent, and Defoe doesn't. Maybe they're all transported. We don't see like any kind of locals and stuff like in speaking German. So it's interesting. I don't know. I was looking it up. I don't know if they're meant to be German or not. Like I couldn't figure that part out. It was throwing me off on my second viewing.
Thomas apologizes for being late, but for one of many times, Canuck says, "Providential, my boy, providential." Thomas thanks Canuck for the gig. Canuck says, "Once I heard you got married, I knew it was Providence."
Huh. Wait, Shawn, isn't it just knock?
So it's her knock, but they say her Canuck.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say Canuck or her Canuck. Canuck creepily starts doting on about how hot.
I think it's air Canuck.
Like I said, Eggers super specific. I'm just reading it in Long Island, New York, white trash style. Canuck creepily starts doting on about how hot Ellen is and tells Thomas, "I've been talking to a foreign count, very old. He wants a home here in Visberg to retire. He's got one foot in the grave." Thomas is stoked to help, but Canuck already has a spot located for the Count, Grunwald Manor, which also happens to be a ruin, and Thomas is very confused.
So how do they communicating? Letters, I guess?
Maybe that's what he shadily covers up right now. Canuck, this old dude, he said his old dude wants an old home, and he's got lots of cash money.
Mhm.
However, the Count is too old to travel, so now Thomas has to jackass all the way to the Count to get this deed signed.
Mhm.
And now we get some super shady stuff. Canuck is showing Thomas where the Count lives on the map, but next to his map, we see all these markings and encryptions, and dare I say, a little wax stamp with a 7-pointed star.
Mhm. His sigil. That's Nosferatu sigil. It's on my mug, actually.
7?
Yeah, of
You
course.
get it again.
Holy, unholy, however you want it. 7 always pops up.
Shady ass Canuck immediately goes to cover up these 7-pointed stars. Thomas is already worried. Can't the Count just come here and sign the deed when he moves in? Canuck's like, nah, this is too urgent. You must first spend this incredibly enormous amount of time to travel to him for weeks, get him to sign the deed, then he can move his old ass down here after that. I'll be honest, this entire plan sucks.
Yeah, I mean it's good for the dude running the place and it's good for Orlok, but it's no good for Thomas.
Canuck says he wants an agent in the flesh, and he
Mm.
will reward handsomely.
Yeah, the flesh.
If you get this account, you are officially part of this firm. Thomas is now excited. What is the Count's name, Vertebrae?
Orlok.
Bomb, bomb, bomb. Canuck's shady ass walks away, chuckling to himself, as immediately it begins pouring outside. Back at home, Thomas tells Ellen news. He's got a bail for 6 weeks to get this deed signed. He tells Ellen she can crash with his buddy Harding.
Yeah, it's not crash. It's like they're like take care of her.
Yeah, yeah.
Why I'm gone. Like that's
Yeah.
very, 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 very old school. Like she can't handle herself. You got to go stay with my rich buddy, and they'll take care of you.
Ellen is pissed. She tells Thomas he can't leave. She had a dream, a wedding, not in a chapel. They were under an enormous cloud cast out beyond the hills. She gets to the altar and there's a figure in black, death. But
Mm.
she's stoked about it. They get married. Everyone at the wedding is dead, but
Mm.
she's stoked about it. To be holding her hands with death. Thomas tells her not to worry. It's just a dream like she's had in the past.
You know, I wrote in my notes. He must be thinking, man, I'm glad I'm going to be away for 6 weeks. This is a
Can't wait to
lot.
get away from this loony.
Gotta go. I'm sorry.
She,
Holding
tell-
hands with death. That sounds awful. See you later.
she tells him it's an awful omen, begs him not to leave. We cut to fancy ass Harding's place. Dude's got money, servants,
Ton.
cigars, liquor, family. Nice place. What a life for now.
Look at those outfits, Shawn. Look at what they're wearing when they're just
Just,
like hanging out. It's so
yeah,
much work.
yeah. It looks so uncomfortable, but
Like,
like baller as hell.
yeah, but like you're just around the house like that. Like
Mhm.
that's their sweatpants. Like
Yeah.
they just come home and like that's how
With a
they hang out.
bow and like a vest. Yeah.
You know what? I feel awful. We should have dressed up for this episode. We
Imagine. I
didn't
got a
try.
suit. I got a suit in the other room.
Look at that. You got a suit? You going to use that suit for anything?
Yeah. I got a lot of weddings I'm going to. He's celebrating with Thomas, tells Thomas he loves his daughters and there is another baby on the way. He cannot resist his wife, Anna.
Yeah, he cannot. He's all over her in this entire movie.
Thomas promises Harding he will pay him back the debt he owes him. He begs Harding to take care of Ellen. She begged me to stay, and Harding scoffs. And toss aside your fine opportunity? Thomas says her past melancholy is returning. I'm going to do these impressions to the best of my ability.
All right, here we go.
Anna tells the kids to go to bed. They scream. They beg not to. There's a monster in the room. Do not feed me to the monster. I can hear it breathing under the bed. Cool.
Nice.
Harding says he has to go hunt a monster, much like Hellboy.
Oh, look at you. You know, I wrote in my notes, creepy little annoying kids in fancy dresses.
And that's their hangout. They're in
Yes,
these
spoiled
million
little rich kids in evening gowns. Like every day is the prom. They're just like hanging out in the house, and he wants to have more kids.
money, money, money.
Man,
He goes to put the kids to bed, and Ellen and Thomas just get it on right there out in the open in the middle of this little room. Cut to nighttime. Thomas is asleep. Ellen is in front of a mirror. She cuts off a strand of her hair to put in a heart-shaped locket. She looks into the mirror with an almost evil look on her face. All right, now we cut to a naked man, laughing maniacally in a room, lit with candles, speaking another language. He's drawing on himself. He turns around. Now, Vertebrae. When he turns around, did you immediately know who this was, or did it take a while to hit you like it took a while to hit me?
I did, but I'm also abundantly clear on the Dracula story and Nosferatu story. So
Okay.
this is following pretty close. That's one of the things about this movie, and although I liked it a lot, it was beautifully shot, beautifully acted, and score is great. But I was brought into it, but still, because I kind of know where everything is headed, it wasn't, whereas The Witch like fully engulfed me because I had no idea where we were headed and absolutely anything could happen. I figured we were following this path, so it felt a little bit different when I'm watching it. Now I enjoy it, but it's in like a different way. Like I don't have the initial first viewing where you're like, "Oh crap, look what happened," or "That's my milking the Packers moment," or whatever, because I kind of knew, some of it's changed obviously, but you knew kind of the path. So yeah, I knew it was him from the story.
Well, it took me a while. He's in the middle of the floor naked, drawing symbols on his flesh. He's copying off this board. He says, "Your lordship, it's done as you've demanded. He shall be in your rule, and I will attend to you here, near the object of the contract." The camera rises, and there he is, naked man, Air Canuck. In the middle of the room, sitting in the middle of the 7-pointed star, a giant gust of wind blows through the room and blows out all the candles. Cut to everyone, Ellen, Harding, Anna, all saying goodbye to Thomas, wishing him well on his journey. Ellen makes him promise to write her every day. He leaves, and immediately she looks horrified.
Sean, that pentagram candle party, that's exactly how I picture you watching films for this podcast. That's how I want to picture you watching these films for these podcasts, with your pentagram candle party. Maybe clothed. I would prefer if you were clothed.
Pentagram Candle Party, great band name.
Oh yeah, look at that. They're like that's our pop punk band.
Our new wave band.
Oh yeah, we got bangs.
Cut to the middle of absolute friggin' nowhere. Just Thomas and his horse walking in the silent cold. Oh, how the boredom would drive me insane.
Oh, I'd be scared. I don't know if I'd be bored.
Oh, yeah, horrified. Just out in the cold,
Yeah.
ready to just like die out in the snow. Yeah.
And the whole time you're thinking, I got to just do this thing and meet this guy. But like, my wife's just told me before I left on my trip that she had a dream that she married death. So good luck on that horse by yourself in the woods.
He ends up in this gypsy village, children being hounding him for cash, villagers dancing him around him till he approaches a residence with this Jason Momoa gypsy looking dude smoking a pipe, who immediately starts laughing at him. All the villagers start laughing at him. The owner of the lodge comes out and yells at all the gypsies, doesn't want any trouble from Thomas, who says he's pooped, he needs to rest, he'll pay cold, hard cash.
Sean, when he takes off on that horse initially, he's going like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And then we just kind of cut to him walking, and we get winter horror. So, because we get like the snow and everything. But I find this gypsy village, and it's in the original, a little bit hokey. Like they're all just there. I guess maybe they're going to party. After I think about it a little bit and what we see later on with them, I guess there's a reason that they're all kind of doing their music and party, and this is sort of their ritual and their festival. So it makes sense. But the first time you see it and you don't know that, I was kind of thrown off. I'm like, this feels a little movie-rific. Like they just showed up and everybody's happens to always be singing and dancing. But then when you see the other part, as Eggers often does, it makes even more sense when you see the other part, because they're building up to something. They got to get drunk to do it.
Yes. Thomas says he's going to Castle Orlok, and immediately the owner is like, "Good God, man, do not mention that castle's name." Thomas walks into this lodge area. Everyone is smoking. The aesthetic in this room is gnarly. It is smoke-filled, huge fire, old ladies saying prayers. Thomas walks in, and the whole place goes silent, and everybody stares at him.
Yeah, it's the creepiest. I wrote creepiest Airbnb or bed and breakfast of all time.
I don't even know how you could breathe in there. But all the fog of the smoke, it was just badass. An old lady takes Thomas to his room, begs him not to go to the castle. Beware the shadow. It covers you in a nightmare. You're awake in a dream. There's no escape. She tells him to pray, gives him a crucifix. She does this little spitting noise that I love. Tuh, tuh, tuh. And she walks away praying. It's creepy as hell. Thomas is awake in the middle of the night. There's a ritual happening in the village. They got a naked virgin on a horse walking in the forest looking for the unclean spirit, and Thomas follows. They arrive at a graveyard and they stop at the vampire's grave. The horse begins screeching. The dogs begin barking. They exhume the corpse. They stick this enormous spike through it. It spews all this gnarly looking blood. Thomas screams in horror and then wakes up in bed with his shoes full of mud.
Yeah.
This is the first of many time lapses that begin to happen with Thomas.
Yeah, like how long is this? I forget. How long is this trip supposed to take him? Well, he's going to be gone for 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
But it doesn't take 6 weeks to get there. So presumably
3 there,
3 weeks there and 3 back, or maybe 2 weeks there and you're there for a little and back. Like that's a long ride.
Brutal. Thomas screams in absolute horror. He wakes up in bed. His shoes are on full of mud. He walks out of the lodge. Everyone is gone. Villagers, everything, everyone, and this poor son of a bitch's horse.
Yeah, mean.
Now he's trekking the entire way on foot. What a nightmare. He approaches a rickety-ass bridge that has a shed with like 100 crosses inside of it. We are now entering the Dome of Evil. Cut to this absolutely amazing shot, middle of the road, but also middle of the forest, like a Mortal Kombat level. Light of the moon shining through. It's snowing, and Thomas is in the middle of this 4-way crossroad.
Yeah, it felt very Exorcist to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like the poster with the light.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really neat. There's a lot of Exorcist in this film.
Mm-hmm. I agree. He looks ahead, and through the gleam of the moon, through the trees, a silhouette forms and a stampeding noise gets closer. It's a dark horse and carriage approaching rapidly right at him, but it stops in front of him. He covers his face, and when he uncovers it, instead of it facing him, it's now like sideways, and the door opens slowly by itself.
Yeah, he's got his Uber showed up to the evil Uber showed up to pick him up. Shawn, remember this point. We can make this creepy wagon show up to pick him up, but it can't transport other things. We'll get to that later on.
Okay. Thomas begins to walk, but his walk turns into like a glide, like he's on a treadmill, like the Jamiroquai music video.
Oh, geez, that's an old reference. Look at
Thomas
you.
gravitates towards the carriage. I feel like already his mind is playing tricks on him ever since last night when he saw the vampire exhumed and executed. Everything starts getting weird for him. We get another one of the most absolutely amazing shots in this movie. In the distance, the moon shining through the clouds above Count Orlok's castle, like Norman Bates' house in Psycho. Mm-hmm. This long, winding road, the horse and carriage race toward the castle. Behind it, 3 wolves are chasing, snarling. Inside the carriage, Thomas is freaking out, having trouble breathing, falling into a trance. Again, another incredible shot. The horses are like galloping across this bridge, headed right towards Orlok's castle, which just looks absolutely badass. Thomas arrives. However, he's also sort of wakes up. Mm-hmm. However, also because of our buddy Charlie from our recent 0.5 episode, something also came to my attention. He mentioned if you have a shot of someone who's like waking up out of a haze, they like breathe on the camera to get the humidity on the camera. And as it clears up and fades away, the character wakes up and things come in more into focus and stuff. I feel like that exact shot happens here because Thomas seems to be asleep, his eyes open, and the camera's so close to him, like he breathes and it fogs the lens and then it dissipates and then everything sort of comes into focus and he wakes up and he's not in the carriage. Now he's standing, approaching a door.
Yeah, I don't know if that's how they film that now, but it certainly gets fuzzy and clear. I don't know if Robert Eggers is like,
it had that effect where it was like foggy and then it sort of went away. But yeah, I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Now we're staring at these. He's starting to lose little bits and pieces of time. He's lost in this madness of Orlok's castle. Thomas slowly approaches the large chamber door. Violin strings are shrieking in the background, creating this terrifying atmosphere. But before Thomas can gently rap on the chamber door, it opens. Far away on the other side, we see his silhouette, Orlok, creepily. You could already tell he's annoyed, standing like 100 feet away. Thomas nervously bows as he's like, "What's up, man?" Orlok turns around and walks away. We get this terrible feeling of doom and dread immediately. Chamber door begins closing behind him as he enters the castle, and you could hear all the chains and gears clanking and rattling as it closes. Sounds awesome. Orlok is pissed already. Thomas is late again. Thomas and Orlok are walking up the winding staircase. As Orlok is chastising Thomas, he's like, "Sorry, Count, my bad." But the camera's following up these winding stairs, and at one point you see Orlok, but at another point he just vanishes and he's gone, and even Thomas is wondering where the hell Orlok is. He reaches the top of the steps to Orlok's chambers, which is a cool spot, fireplace, food, drink. Thomas hesitantly walks in, and there's Orlok, creepily standing by the large table in front of the fire, just eyeballing Thomas's every move. There he goes.
The butcher. I have only black jelly beans for you.
There you have black jelly beans.
Only for you.
Orlok, did you buy those black jelly beans just for this podcast?
No.
I'll be honest, you look more like Super Mario than Count Orlok.
Yeah, well, I don't wait. I don't know what you're talking about. Who's Vertebrae 33?
Orlok tells Thomas, "Put the deed out on the table and relax with me, bro." Thomas creeped the hell out, is like, "Can we do this tomorrow morning?" Orlok is like,
long trip.
"Yeah,
I had a long
Orlok's
trip,
like,
man.
Your
Shut
ass better do what the hell I tell you to do when the hell I tell you to do it." Thomas is like, "Yes, sir." Orlok is like, "Lord, you will address me as Lord as my bloodline demands it."
That's the way I want to introduce myself to everybody from now on, Shawn. Whenever we go anywhere at Comic-Con, if somebody says vertebrae, I'm going to say, Lord
Vertebrae. Thomas is terribly uncomfortable. Orlok tells Thomas how annoyed he is to have to look at this deed in these papers, even though Thomas is like, "Can we do this tomorrow?" Orlok is also annoyed with Thomas's employer, Air Knock. Orlok moves slow. He's wheezing, having a hard time breathing because he's like 6 million years old. However, he also moves very quickly.
It just shows up in different spots. Like, hello. You know what's funny, Shawn? His voice.
Yeah.
You know the band Laibach?
No.
The industrial band Laibach?
I'm going to learn all about it now, Vertebrae.
Okay. I don't know if Laibach is on Spotify, but they do they were an industrial band that was, probably toured with KMFDM and all these other bands in the 90s. They do this incredible cover of Sympathy for the Devil.
How do you spell Laibach?
Laibach. And if you type in Sympathy for the Devil, you'll see what the singer looks like with his big giant mustache. And when he's singing like Sympathy for the Devil, it's in that exact voice.
It is on Spotify, and we will add it.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man wealth and taste. It's like this. I can't even do how deep it is. It's like incredibly deep. Only you. I think you could do it once you hear it because you have a deep voice.
I will add it to the In Madness.
Is it on there? Sympathy for the Devil.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at it. It's right here.
Oh my! You gotta have to listen to it. You're gonna have to listen to it.
I will put that on. We get this amazing shot of him walking out of frame to the left, but on the right, he pops up right behind Thomas, pouring him a drink. Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's red wine, I guess. It looks like blood. It's in this awesome looking chalice. Orlok again moves slowly, and we hear this like whip of bat wings or something. And quickly, Orlok is now seated in this chair looking at this deed. I like to think he has like transformative bat powers where he can quickly shapeshift between Orlok and Bat to help himself move a little quicker.
I
Like he's
guess. I wonder, they kind of break from, a lot of Dracula lore was brought on in interpretations in other films. So this is certainly, we're getting our dirty, crusty, more folk vampire story, right? He's not a cleaned up Bela Lugosi. They don't allude to him being transforming to any animals in this at all. Although we have the wolves, right? The dogs are the wolves, which is an interesting thing. So he might, either could empower them or whatever, but he certainly, one, he seems to move slow, and then all of a sudden, suddenly, also, this is the worst business meeting of all time. This is, you rode horseback. I don't even know how long. You stayed at, the gypsy equivalent of the Hyatt, and you got no horse. You get in a creepy carriage. You get there. It's presumably the middle of the night, and the guy wants to just like be creepy and have you
down to
look at a
business.
contract that you can't read, by the way. So yeah, this is a weird one. This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Yeah.
For some reason, if he's not creeped out enough, Thomas begins asking the Count about the ritual he saw or thinks he saw the gypsies do when they exhume the corpse. Orlok's like, it was the eve of St. Andras. I'm doing that the best I could. The darkest witching night, when devil's magic bids the wolf to speak with tongues of men, and every nightmare treads upon this earth, ascendant from the torturer's grave. Orlok then begins laughing, or trying to laugh, and says, we have many superstitions here that may seem backward to a man such as yourself.
Yeah, he plays himself off as being weak too and not knowledgeable, but it's a very interesting character because it's sort of weak but like in control, like he can turn around and he's like, nope, call me Lord. Like it's yeah, it's a cool character. If this was any other film, I would say that, Thomas was headed on his hero's journey, but he is not.
No, he is not. As if he's still not creeped out enough, apparently, by this conversation, he decides to keep poking the bear and goes on to tell Orlok the gypsies exhumed a corpse. Orlok says it's their filthy ritual. Still
Good
not
one.
yeah, thank you. Still not satisfied. Annoying ass Thomas is like, what kind of ritual? Finally, Orlok has had enough of this interrogation. Speak not of it again. Which scares the hell out of Thomas and finally shuts him up. Orlok is like, I'm looking forward to retiring to your neck of the woods in your modern city that knows nothing of such morbid fairy tales.
Oh, it's great. He's like, I'm going to move to Del Boca Vista.
He tells Thomas, eat. Thomas nervously picks up a piece of bread, begins cutting it. Orlok asks Thomas if he's married. And of course, nervously, Thomas slices his thumb open and Orlok yells at him once again, take heed to what you do.
Yeah, man, come on, bro. What are you doing there? I mean, in his defense, like, it's pretty uncomfortable. It's really dark in there. I imagine it's very smelly. That place has to really stink. There's just a rotting dude sitting there, right? It's got to smell bad.
We get this insane close-up of Orlok's eyes staring at the blood in absolute amazement, ready to devour, but holding back at the moment. He says, I might ease your wound. He says, come by the fire. You don't look so good, dude. We get this quick cut, still in the same room. Tom is still in the same chair. However, he looks sickly in absolute horror. He's right next to this enormous fireplace. The statue by the fireplace moves its head and looks at Thomas.
Very cool. Very cool.
Panicking, Thomas turns to his left, and there's Orlok creepily standing, lurking slowly towards him. Big ass hat, big ass mustache, long, creepy fingers and fingernails. The music's crescendoing. Orlok is approaching. We see this absolute look of horror on Thomas's face as the camera's zooming in on him. I love when Eggers does these look of horror close-up shots. When he gets right in the actor's face, he does it in Lighthouse with our Batman, Robert Pattinson. It gets crazy uncomfortable. I love it.
Eggers says that he always tells the actors to not move their eyebrows a lot when they're filming and save it for bigger moments. So he's always yelling eyebrows. You know, he seems a little eccentric on set. That probably why he'll tend to use the same crew or the same people, because actors probably have to get used to this. But it's funny now. I want to watch one of his films, just like eyebrow cam, just stare at the actors' eyebrows and see how many times they move them.
Camera cuts to the shipyard as Anna, Ellen, and the kids are out having a walk. Even the background with all these old ass ships is amazing. They're walking through the water. It's like a
so it's like a cemetery, because there's like gravestones and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell it was.
Yeah, I think it's like a cemetery, which is interesting. So, weird place to talk. They're all dressed up like, really fancy to go walking, but there's like these crosses and stuff, which is what made me think it was a cemetery. What's interesting about that, Shawn, is a lot of like when we started to build more cities in the United States and you would get into more urban areas, if the more buildings and stuff they had, the less, you had to go outside of town to get to nature. People would sometimes hang out at graveyards and like have like, because it was open and clean and nice out, and they would hang out and have like picnics and stuff there, and not just people that were there visiting other family members, just like a place to go as people got used to being in cities. It's an open space. So that's it's interesting. But yeah, they're walking along the water with the ships, and I felt like it was a graveyard. I could be wrong. I'll have to, maybe when I do the Eggers commentary track, and we'll talk about it in another episode, we can find out if he describes kind of that place to us.
Ellen starts getting weird, asks Anna if she ever feels like she's not a person, not really present or alive, just controlled like a doll, something breathing life into you. And it's like, yeah, we all get a little wacky sometimes. Ellen's, for the most part, tells Anna she thinks she's cursed. Anna tells her it's God, but Ellen thinks differently. She says the sky and the sea calls to me, something close is at hand. And it says it's God, a gentle breeze from the heavens, but Ellen says it's destiny. Anna calls her a romantic, and Ellen promises she is not crazy and apologizes for acting childish. She's lost without her love, Thomas.
Yeah, these I'm not crazy about the I don't want to spend time with these characters. Like, I want to get back to the castle. But I think you've got to balance it. You certainly got to balance it out, and later on in the film they balance it out with all the like the alchemy, sciencey type stuff, which I love a lot.
Cut to Thomas once again, as he has and will do many times in this movie, just wakes up having no idea where the hell he is. Dude is just on the floor in front of Orlok's fireplace. The sun is shining through the windows. Thomas had a rough night. He starts roaming through the castle. He feels a pain in his chest, checks it with a mirror. Orlok hickey.
Shawn, two things. One, I wrote in my notes, this is like the Hangover Transylvania edition. Like, I feel like there should have been some like Polaroids on the table of like what happened the night before. He just wakes up next to the fireplace. The other thing is, with they kind of tweak this character where it bites the chest instead of the neck. And Eggers said that was inspired by folklore, and where vampires drank from the chest, and it had a lot to do with pressure. And they talk about pressure and blood pressure and stuff later on in this movie. So he's digging in a little bit to other, dragging in not just this film that he's remaking, but he's doing extra research on top of it to give us some of that folklore from the time of like what people would think vampires did to you. And it's very interesting that it's not so nobody's going to have the devil's mark on their neck.
The devil's mark. 3 bloody bite marks right in Tom's chest. Cut to nighttime. Orlok is wheezing. Give me a wheeze, Vertebrae. You see this 7-pointed star stamped on all these documents. Orlok stamps it on his contract, turns it to Tom, and he's like, all right, you sign it now.
God, how long does it take to sign this? It's another night. Why do we need a whole other evening to sign this paperwork? Let's get it on. This guy is like, he moves so slow when he wants to move so slow with those incredible hands, by the way. Those hands are just so cool.
Thomas takes a look at the contract and he's like, uh-oh, because it's written in symbols he can't read a word of.
Mm-hmm.
Nosferatu says, it's in the language of my forefathers. Don't worry about it, man. It's totally cool.
It's almost like buying a house, though, Shawn. Weren't you given
100%.
like a ton of papers to sign? Could you imagine if that's how? Imagine if Orlok was in charge of the closing of your house.
With
It
all
would
those
take
papers I had to
days,
sign,
days,
yeah.
days, and days.
With
Like
all
you
the
would just
papers I had
be
to sign,
there.
it might as well have been in another friggin' language.
It would just take days with Orlok
Sitting
making
there
everybody stick
wheezing.
around. Yeah, everybody passes out, wakes up with holes in their chest.
He also notices Tom's maiden token, the little locket Ellen cut her hair off and put into earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Nosferatu's like, is that your bride? Hand over the locket.
Is that a thing? Hair in the locket?
It's in 18 whatever?
38?
Maybe,
Like, is that a
maybe.
thing? Like, remember me?
I mean,
Yeah.
listen, Eggers is super detailed. I wouldn't doubt it.
If I got a locket and I cut off some of my gray beard hair and put it in there, would you,
Yeah, I'll
would
wear it
you
around my waist, yeah.
your waist?
Tom hesitates, but he hands the locket to Orlok, who creepily sniffs it and says, lilac.
Hmm.
Tells Tom he's lucky to be in love. Tom says, it's Providence, just like Eric Knock.
And, we start to see his face this whole time. Orlok is very shadowy. We start to see his face more and more clearly, Shawn, which brings me to my question to you, and not my milking the alpacas. I stole your gig there. Does the mustache bother you?
So, and that was the thing. I was like, this will probably piss a lot of people off because I know what the regular Orlok looks like, and he didn't have a mustache.
Uh-huh.
And the fancy swoop hair, phenomenal haircut Orlok has.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it didn't at all. It may have for like a second because I was like,
Mhm.
and then I was like, no, I don't care. No, I didn't like it because
Right.
he is so goddamn good as Orlok. I'm not letting the mustache ruin it for me, and it doesn't.
Yeah,
I got
a
used to it.
and that was kind of a controversial moment. Eggers talked about it. He was asked about it in a ton of interviews. He stated that he thought, uh, a gentleman that lived there in Romania at that time would have a big, giant, bushy mustache. So, it was, specific to that time period. It's interesting. I, m- I don't hate it, but my logistical brain says this guy's like really rotten and he's really old and decrepit, but he's got this perfect giant brown mustache. You know what I mean? And so like it's like how is that the part? There's like barely any other hair on him. He is on his head, but it's like part of his head, not his whole head.
I
And
mean,
that part is like still intact. But like then I thought, oh, well, like maybe, he's got like powers and stuff. So just like I've been hanging on to this goatee for the last like 30 years, maybe that's his thing. And if I could have kept this thing solid black instead of turning gray, maybe I would have, right? So, but yeah, it's by the time I saw it, I knew about it. So I don't know what I would have felt like if I saw it. Like you saw it in the theater and didn't hear about it. I saw it after the theater and had heard, I had seen jokes and memes, so I knew. And I thought, well, that's not a big spoiler. Charlie wasn't around to tell me about the mustache, but
uh,
other people were. And so like I kind of already knew about it, and I was like, okay, it's fine. I think I got used to it after seeing it, but I just think it's interesting that that's the part that's still like okay on his body, but
Man, yeah, I knew that if Twitter was gonna be crying about something, it was
Mhm.
gonna be the mustache. And I was like, fuck him. Good. I like it. I dig it. I'm down for it. Um, Orlok is annoyed and he's like, sign the paper. Thomas is hesitant. So Orlok speaks more in a manner he understands.
Mm,
Cold, hard cash.
yeah.
Opens up his cool ancient treasure chest, and I'm like, Vertebrae's loving this thing.
Yeah, I think it was awesome. So
Whips
cool.
out a sack of gold, dumps it on the table, and he's like, here's your commission. Cha-ching. Thomas almost beyond his own power, almost like his hand is forced, signs the contract and throws down the pen.
Dun dun dun. You know, too, Orlok reminds me of like, you visit like a really old retired person and it's like they want you to stick around a little longer. Like, I got some candy. You want something to eat? I'll make you something to eat. Like, here's my gold. It's gonna take me 15 minutes to take it out of this box, but
I mean,
yeah.
he's Grandpa Simpson.
Yeah.
And I love this. Orlok, billions of years old, the face of evil, and he makes a cute little joke. And he's like, now are we neighbors? And I was like, that's very funny. I like
Which
that
I
he
want
had
to see part two, right? Where like
yeah,
they were actually neighbors. May I borrow some sugar?
yeah. Orlok's out mowing the lawn.
Yeah, they're having like well, only at night. He'd have to mow it at night.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 2 in the morning. He's out there cutting his grass.
Thomas is like, why do you want to live in this antique place you just bought near me? And Nosferatu gets up and he's like, never you mind that. The covenant is signed. You must want to hit the hay.
Hmm.
Orlok is hungry. Thomas wants to get the hell out of there ASAP. He's having horrible dreams. He fears he's sick. Orlok's like, oh man, it's a shame. It's a bad omen, a journey in poor health. Guess you got to crash here for the night, my dude. Orlok is very hungry. He leaves and steals Tom's locket. Again, Thomas wakes up. We're losing large chunks of time here. Checks his chest, more Orlok hickeys.
Mm.
Now he's tripping out, running all over the castle, checking every door. Every door is locked. He tries to escape, but he's trapped. Takes a rock, breaks a lock off one of the doors, and walks down a long, dark staircase. He arrives at a tomb. Ancient coffins surround the room with a pretty sweet, evil one at the very end, and you know damn well what's in that.
Yeah, so that's his sarcophagus, which I had to look that up, Sean, what the difference was. I think the coffin is more like a wood box, and the sarcophagus is usually much bigger. It's a lot of times made out of stone as well.
Definitely my notes say coffin, so when I say coffin, just replace it in your brain with sarcophagus. Also, sick band name.
Oh yeah, that's
There's
awesome.
gotta be a band called Sarcophagus. I'll look it up after this.
Right, and the coffin, was usually buried in the ground
Mhm.
too, and the more wealthy people had the sarcophagus, which was usually made of stone and not meant to be buried in the ground.
How do you spell sarcophagus? Sarcophagus.
Yep. Is that band?
Uh, there's a band called Sarcophagus, which I'm guessing is a stoner
Uh,
Oh, that is so cool. They arrive at a tomb. Ancient so yeah, it's the one at the very end with the seven-pointed star on it.
yep.
Thomas pushes the lid off, and there he is, Orlok, covered
Mm,
in rats and maggots, taking himself a nap.
it's crazy. So like he's when he's resting, rats are eating his body. Are the rats him? Or and then there's the maggots, but then it's not like when he was sitting there talking to him having the meeting, there's not like maggots all over him then. It's crazy. I like
Yeah,
it. I
or
like
maybe
not knowing. I
yeah.
love not knowing.
Yeah, that's like his just in his sarcophagus. It's like how we want, like, extra pillows and blankets. He's like, "More rats, more maggots."
Mm.
Thomas is horrified. He goes to leave and trips over a pickaxe. He picks it up, he lifts it high in the air, and the second he goes to strike Orlok with it, Orlok wakes up and grabs the axe.
Mm.
Oh, shit. Busted. So busted.
I wrote in my notes, Harry lies all naked and disfigured. Nothing shocking. And yeah, you have to add Jane's Addiction to the In Madness Spotify playlist. Naked and disfigured, nothing shocking.
Anything
Why
you
do you
want,
make me sing?
Vertebrae,
Why do you make me sing? Don't do it.
because you make me add things to the In Madness
The
Spotify.
Cult, Jane's Addiction. I'm fleshing this list out for you. I'm making friends.
Orlok rises out of his coffin naked. You could see his little Orlok dingle.
Mm.
Thomas runs away as 3 wolves chase behind him, but he gets to a door and closes it before they get to him. Orlok is sniffing the locket. He rolls his eyes in the back of his head and he says, "Your husband is lost to you."
Oh man, and they got Orlok even has wolves in the throne room. Shawn, look at that.
That's
See,
another
we
band.
already added them. We already added them, but I'm just saying.
Orlok reaches out his long hand with his pointy fingernails and says, "Dream of me, just me," as Ellen, almost possessed, begins sort of sleepwalking in a trance.
Mm.
So again, I'm like, does she want this to happen? Is she part of this plan as well? Thomas thinks he's safe until he turns around. We see only Orlok's shadow rising. He seems to raise his hand and snap his fingers, and in a trance under Orlok's power, Thomas seems to turn around against his will and open the door, and standing there like a badass is Orlok surrounded by wolves.
Mm.
Now
It's
this is
another cool band name, Surrounded
Surrounded
by
by
Wolves.
wolves. This is the part where I raised the exact question that you brought up earlier. In the beginning, the wolves were chasing after the carriage. I thought it was an extension of Orlok, the same way
Mm.
he walks around slowly, and then I think he like changed into a bat to help him move faster. And when he got busted in the nude, I feel like he transformed into the wolves that chase after Thomas faster. And there's 3 wolves, and it looks like when he's standing there, there's only 2 wolves, but it also might be my resolution on my TV. I think the 3 wolves were there, but I still like to think that he could shapeshift into a bat or a wolf. And we just never see it happen.
Yeah, maybe.
Orlok approaches Thomas. However, now Thomas is in bed. It seems like another chunk of time is lost. Thomas is panicking. Orlok's got the long hand and these long fingers extended. It's like his move.
Mm-hmm.
There's this sick shot of Orlok standing above Thomas, which quickly flashes to naked Ellen with blood pouring out of her mouth and eyes.
Mm.
Flips back to Orlok, who grabs Thomas by the throat and chomps right into his chest, sucking his blood as the two begin to rise off the bed. Thomas is moaning in pain and sort of pleasure. We got some sweaty man-on-man action here. This movie is very pornographic, and I am still totally okay with it. We get this 6-shot close-up of Ellen's face, blood pouring out of her eyes and mouth. So sick. Got to Thomas now on the floor, almost dead, Nosferatu on top of him, naked, face totally dug into his chest, and this dude is taking enormous gulps of blood. He's putting his like whole body into the sucking motion, taking all the life from Tom. Cut to Dr. Wilhelm Sievers. Just so happens to be the dad from The Witch, as you mentioned earlier. We also recently learned about the Wilhelm scream in our Hellboy episode. Trying to diagnose Ellen. Sleepwalking is brought on by congestion of the blood. Too much blood. This is a common theme in this movie. Does Ellen have too much blood flowing through her body, and this is what brought Orlok to her?
I don't think it's that. I think that's just the scientific piece of them, trying to figure it out, and some of the folklore about pressure and blood
She's
pressure.
his fountain of youth.
I don't I'm not seeing them working together. I see a strong connection, but I don't see any cahoots. I'm not seeing it yet, Shawn, but you got time to
If it
convince
pops
me.
up, I think it pops up even more. Doc Severs is telling all this to Harding, who is still watching over Ellen while Thomas is away. Harding tells Doc she had these fits in the past. She's troubled.
Mm-hmm.
Doc says she should sleep in her corset, calms the womb, revives circulation. Could you imagine sleeping in this uncomfortable, like, choking mechanism that they
Yeah,
use?
and he's a nice guy, but he's like, oh, let's just give her some more ether. Everything's very like, just here, just breathe in this for a little while and go back to sleep while we tighten up your corset.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if she freaks out, just tie her to the bed.
Yeah, all good. No worries.
She's moaning, he's coming to me, and Doc's like, I guess I'll up the ether.
Mm.
Once again, poor Thomas wakes up, chest covered in blood, immediately a black wolf, which looks different than the other wolves, which I think were sort of gray and white. Maybe this is the Nosferatu wolf. It lunges at Thomas, who scurries away, but it turns out there's two black wolves chasing him. He heads to the window, falls off the ledge and into the water. Ellen's crying, no word on Thomas, and Harding's like, we're checking.
Yeah, they're all gussied. They're all gussied up. They're all like dressed to the nines to just hang out and be all upset by the waterfront.
She asks about Air Canuck. Harding says there is still no sign of him. His firm is in daily chaos. Ellen doesn't trust Air Canuck, doesn't like him, wants to rain hellfire down upon him and the firm. Harding insists she does not. He promises he will check daily till Air Canuck is found and tries to assure her that Thomas is okay.
How would he know? He's just saying it to be. He's
just
saying it to be nice.
Yeah.
Just to be nice. He'll be fine. Calm down. And then he's like, oh, she's crazy. Yeah, 100%.
Anna, his wife, tells him he needs to ease up on Ellen, but you can tell he's fed up with the spectacle. The whole household centers upon her fairy tale spectacles. Anna loves. Yeah, I'm trying. Anna loves Ellen and understands things are difficult now, but tells Harding, just be cool. He apologizes and says Doc will be back soon to check on Ellen and pump her full of ether. Harding has had enough talk about Ellen. He asks Anna, how's the baby? He then tries making out with her, and the second he does, Ellen cock blocks and begins screaming bloody murder, laying on the edge of the dirt and the water, with her legs open, eyes rolling in the back of her head, running her hand over her body in this very sexual, spasmodic kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
Doc is at the office. Guard walks in to tell him about their new patient, little old man.
Yeah, it's a cool little spot where the guy's like, hey, we're a different place now. Like we don't use that like at this like dungeon downstairs. And it's like we kind of don't, we're more modern medicine. We're like up here in the lights, but this guy they found needed to be in the dungeon for sure.
He was screaming and a groaning in the middle of the Christmas market. Which begs the question. Not even begging the question, which solidifies, first off, that Nosferatu is a Christmas movie. It also came out on Christmas.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm on board for this one, Shawn.
Don't start.
I think I need another reference or two or something storyline that drives
There is in the background. I don't know if I wrote it down. I'll have to check. In the background of one of the shots with Harding smoking I think he's with Anna, and there's a Christmas tree in the background with ornaments on it.
You think he was smoking clove cigarettes?
No, I don't think he was smoking. I got confused with the other time he was smoking, but there's definitely a shot in the house with a Christmas tree. Guard tells Doc this little old man killed 3 sheep with his bare hands, and he was eating them raw. I love that dude's delivery on that line. Phenomenal. They head down to the cell. We hear a man laughing maniacally. There is blood and shit all over the walls. The man is saying, Providence, Providence. It's Air Canuck. They have found him. This is also the same old naked dude who was on the floor doing the ritual with the 7-pointed star in the middle of the room. And this is when I noticed in the theater. I'm like, oh, that was the guy. Again, I'm a little slow with things. It takes me wild. Erkenok says, I am his servant. There are dead, bleeding rats on the floor. Erkenok picks up a pigeon. Lives, gifts bestowed upon me by his lordship. Look at this pretty one. His lordship likes the pretty ones the best. Erkenok is covered in blood. He kisses the pigeon's head and also seems to gently give it a small, mocking bite, but instead kisses the pigeon on the head. It is so tense. Erkenok says he is infinity, eyes shining, and then putrescence, asphyxiance, and then takes a gigantic chomping bite out of this pigeon's head. He rips the head off, and the next shoots a geyser of blood into his face, and he says, and devourance.
Yeah.
So sick. Erkenok is gnarly.
He's just pulling a pure Ozzy Osbourne move right there in the middle of the room. He's just barking at the moon, Shawn.
I'll do it for you, Vertebrae. We will
He's
add
just
Ozzy bark at the moon.
Right then and there. But yeah, he is. So it's interesting. So he's possessed, right? So he's possessed. She's not possessed, but she's connected.
Clairvoyant, I guess.
With possession. Presumably the wolves are possessed by him as well. Because why are they doing his bidding? I wonder if they're even his servants, because there's no servants around. So yeah, it's interesting. It's so much of a possession movie. You know, there's lots of like vampire tropes that we don't even really see in this, like it biting somebody and turning them into a vampire. We don't see that.
See, now at the end of this movie, all right, we'll get to it later.
We'll get to it. Uh-oh.
Erkenok turns around, drenched in blood, looks into the doc's eyes and says, he is coming. 'Twas he that invoked me. I was chosen to serve him, for I know what he covets, and he shall cast upon you curses, confusion, affliction, rebukes. I love that word. For you have forsaken me, and he shall reign over all of your empty corpses. Blood is drooling out of Erkenok's mouth, and he says, devourance, devourance. And he leaps at the doc, attacks him, and the guard begins whooping his ass with a stick. Cut to Ellen in bed, spazzing out, possessed, having this crazy seizure, eyes rolling the back of her head. Doc and Harding are ripping away at her corset. Anna is there watching and looking in absolute horror. And that, my friend, I feel like is the perfect halfway point for Nosferatu.
Every time. He gets me every time.
Man, I'm telling you. Okay, so like so she summoned a guardian angel. She got a guardian devil is what we're going with.
Or just not even an angel. Yeah, she just needed support.
Something.
Like she just needed a connection.
So after years, he loses her. But now he finds her again and uses Erkenok to cockblock Thomas after him and Ellen get married, to send Thomas to Orlok for lunch and serve Ellen to Orlok on a silver platter.
Right. And, you know, it's interesting because what he's been doing all this time, has he done it, like we said, has he done this over and over again? Maybe not. Maybe he's drawn to her. You know, listen, he's drawn to a woman who turns out to be no good for him, you know, in the end. And she's drawn to somebody who turns out to be no good for her. So it definitely is. You know, Shawn, I wonder, like, I almost don't consider, I know it's a vampire, but I almost don't consider this a horror movie in a lot of ways. It is gothic horror, but it's not like, and there's like a one or two jump scares, but it's not in that sense. But would you consider The Witch a horror movie?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just like, what I do is like scary movie equals horror movie. Like
Right.
that's pretty much it's just all the bubble is enormous. So I
Mhm.
consider Nosferatu a horror movie because if it's not directly a horror movie, it's like some sort, gothic horror, whatever it is,
Right.
like
Right.
it's in that bubble. So yeah, 100% witch, 100. It's definitely not a comedy. It's definitely not an action movie. Like, yeah, it's like under the horror bubble,
It's
100.
just interesting because he does these films in these period pieces or these certain time, and all this research. So it's almost like when you say it's a horror film, and we love horror films, but it feels like it's almost lessening the amount that went in to the drama, the dramatic aspects of this. Y- it's very, you know, there's been other directors who have noted, and I think Guillermo del Toro was one of them that noted, like, Egger shows up fully formed as a director. Like, we get The Witch, and he's fully formed. There's no like sloppy first couple films until he figures it out. And he, with that film, instantly carves out the type of movies he's going to make. And now, right after that, they just become a Robert Eggers film, and you know what you're going to get with it.
You have brought up Herkenok being like a servant and the wolves being like a servant of Orlocks, which kind of reminded me of the Wanderer from 30 Days a Night.
Mm-hmm.
And we were wondering why he was helping these vampires. What did they promise him? Like
Mm-hmm.
eternal life, eternal power. They make this deal with humans and they promise them something, and the humans go all in on it.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, in this case, it felt like he was just possessed to get what he needed, but who knows? This guy could have been open to this. We don't know his previous life. He could have been into that kind of stuff already. He could have been researching the occult, or I don't even know. His family could have been through generations a family that supported and helped Orlok's family. I don't know, but yeah, very cool.
Are you satisfied with part one, Vertebrae, of Nosferatu?
Am I satisfied? Perhaps.
Oh, he's got the mustache.
Perhaps. Butcher. Perhaps.
Here we go.
Into the black we go. Shawn the Butcher.
Make sure you follow us on the socials at InMadnessPod, InMadnessPod@gmail.com. We want to hear your thoughts about Nosferatu. When did you see it? Where did you see it? What did you think of it? Let us know on the socials. Let us know in the mail sack, InMadnessPod@gmail.com, accepting emails and voice notes. Keep them relatively short.
No, don't
Don't go
worry
too
about it.
crazy long.
Wait. I got to stop you. Send the longest email you want. Send the
Well,
longest voicemail you want. Send them in. Don't
yeah,
listen to
I
Shawn. I
guess.
like the long questions. We could break it up.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Don't listen to me. Check out the YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, give us the 5-star reviews. Check out the In Madness Spotify playlist, which now is going to have
65 typo negative songs.
Happy In Madness Monday. If that is when you're listening, a new episode drops every single Monday. Next Monday, guess what you're getting? New episode, Nosferatu Part 2. Spread the madness. Tell everyone you know about the show. We got 2 years of episodes and movies and hilarious point fives with interesting interviews and just dumbass banter that you could check out. Make sure you tell everyone you know. There's got to be a movie that someone you know likes, and you could tell them, check out these 2 jabronis talking about this movie. It's pretty entertaining. Hopefully not just trashing us behind our back. Make sure you pick up a shirt if you want to represent for us, inmadness.com. Pick up a mug if you want to drink out of our holiness, inmadness.com.
And also, Shawn, you can pick up a new shirt
Oh shit.
at nmadness.com.
Oh
We've got
yeah.
our new logo on a
Oh
t-shirt
yeah.
that's available.
Very cool. Very cool. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Very sick. And I want to thank Tim Howley for being on last week. I want to thank you if you listened. And that is it. And we got stuff planned for our point 5 after this. A lot of cool things coming. Man, we got a lot of busy stuff coming up. I'm going away. Vertebrae is going away. The shit has literally hit the fan, but don't you worry. Your boys got you covered. We're going to drive ourselves crazy to make sure no stone goes unturned with any episode of In Madness Pod. And for that, that's it. You're good, Vertebrae?
I'm good. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next week.